Hello there and welcome. This is All 24 News, world news program coming to you live from Algiers with me, Karim Fazakari. These are your headlines. House of Representatives decides the former U.S. president has failed in his duty as commander-in-chief by allowing the flood of violence of his supporters. Heavy security was present outside Sri Lanka's presidential office hours after security forces cleared a major protest site early Friday. Also coming up, U.S. President Joe Biden has tested positive for COVID-19. And Italy is to hold a snap general election on the 25th of September after the government collapsed and Prime Minister Mario Draghi resigned. Hello again, those were today's top stories. First in our news, the January 6th committee held a prime-time hearing on Thursday, the last of its planned summertime hearings. According to the elected members of the House of Representatives, the former President of the United States has failed in his duty as Commander-in-Chief by allowing the flood of violence of his supporters.
There can be no doubt that he commanded a mob he knew was heavily armed, violent, and angry, to march on the Capitol to try to stop the peaceful transfer of power. And he made targets out of his own vice president and the lawmakers gathered to do the people's work. These facts have gone undisputed. And so there needs to be accountability. Accountability under the law, accountability to the American people.
The latest hearings around the deadly U.S. Capitol riots detailed a lack of response on the day by Donald Trump, as well as what he wouldn't say, with new testimony and footage of the events shown Thursday.
We've heard this evening how everyone in the president's orbit was pushing him to do more, to tell the mob to leave the Capitol. One of those people was Republican leader Kevin McCarthy. He managed to get the president on the phone and told him to call off his supporters. As you will hear, the president refused, and so Leader McCarthy reached out for help to Ivanka Trump, who was at the White House, and Jared Kushner, who that afternoon had just arrived back on a flight from the Middle East.
This was going to be bad for him to tweet this because it was essentially him giving the green light to these people, telling them that what they were doing at the steps of the Capitol and entering the Capitol was okay, that they were justified in their anger. And he shouldn't have been doing that. He should have been telling these people to go home and to leave and to condemn the violence that we were seeing.
I don't want to say that the election is over, former U.S. President Donald Trump said in cutouts during rehearsals for his speech after the January 6th attack. The images were presented by a bipartisan group of U.S. legislators who held a series of television hearings to examine Donald Trump's role in the January 6th, 2021 attack on Capitol Hill.
But this election is now over. Congress has certified the results. I don't want to say the election's over. I just want to say Congress has certified the results without saying the election's over, okay?
U.S. President Joe Biden has tested positive for COVID-19. Biden says his symptoms are mild. It is the first time the 79-year-old tested positive for the virus. Vice President Kamala Harris has been identified as a close contact. Our own Miriam Zian compiled this for us.
The U.S. president appeared publicly in good health when returning to the White House from an event in Massachusetts on Wednesday. But on Thursday, the White House confirmed Biden has contracted COVID-19.
On questioning, President Biden is currently experiencing mild symptoms, mostly a runny nose and fatigue, with an occasional dry cough, which started yesterday evening.
Biden's positive case was discovered during routine White House COVID testing, as the highly contagious BA.5 subvariant of the coronavirus has raised concerns about another wave of infections across the globe. Once detected, his travel schedule was halted and he was put in isolation. Biden released a photo of him working at his desk in the White House residence and also a video to reassure the American public he's doing well.
But I'm doing well, I'm getting a lot of work done, I'm going to continue to get it done, and in the meantime, thanks for your concern, and keep the faith, it's going to be okay.
Despite Biden being in a relatively high-risk age group, he's experiencing mild symptoms as he's fully vaccinated and doubly boosted.
Because the president is fully vaccinated, double boosted, his risk of serious illness is dramatically lower. He's also getting treated with a very powerful antiviral, and that further reduces his risk of serious illness.
That antiviral is Paxlovid, but it's unclear which strain of COVID the president has contracted. Thousands of Americans have been hit by an uptick in the Omicron subvariant BA.5, responsible for a wave of recent COVID cases in the US. Those closest to the president are so far tested negative. The First Lady reassured Americans she was in good health and has no intention of halting her public schedule. The virus has now struck its second president, although the White House says Biden's symptoms are mild and will continue his duties. However, his infection highlights the severity of a pandemic that has killed more than 1 million Americans, leaving only a few unaffected.
Heavy security was present outside Sri Lanka's presidential office hours after security forces cleared a major protest site early Friday. Security forces made several arrests and cleared the protest camp in the capital Colombo, where demonstrators have gathered for the past 104 days. Army and police personnel arrived in trucks and buses around midnight, removing tents and blocking off roads leading to the site.
Thousands of soldiers came and brutally beaten peaceful protesters and destroyed some IT camps and those things and take over the place behind us. And some of the protesters in the hospital, they are badly injured, and some of arrested, and also lawyers are also arrested. And I think President is coward, and he took cowardly action against the peaceful protesters.
Italy is going to hold a snap general election on the 25th of September after the government collapsed and Prime Minister Mario Draghi resigned. The full story with Hossam Burkan.
Italian President Sergio Mattarella announced on Thursday the dissolution of the Senate and the Chamber of Deputies, which will automatically lead to the holding of early elections this fall in the third largest economy in the Eurozone. Clearly a decision he did not want to take.
The early dissolve of Parliament is always a last resort, particularly if, as it is the case of this period, the government has many important tasks to complete the interests of our country, but the developments in the political situation have led to this decision.
His announcement came hours after Mario Draghi stepped down on Thursday. The Prime Minister made his last statement in the Parliament before resigning.
Even central bankers' hearts are touched sometimes. Thank you for this, and thanks for all the work we have done together during this time.
Arrived at the head of the executive in February 2021 to get Italy out of the health and economic crisis, Draghi led his government for less than 18 months. Many leaders across Europe saw him as a steady hand to pull Italy and maybe even the whole continent out of the pandemic. He helped steer billions of dollars of recovery funds to Italy, the largest recipient in the Eurozone, and was leading voice in Europe's support for Ukraine against Russia. But in the end, the central banker couldn't wrangle the diverse group of parties in his coalition, each with its own priorities.
The political situation led to this decision, the discussion, the vote, and the way this vote was expressed yesterday in the Senate clearly showed the absence of Parliament support for the government and the absence of prospects for the creation of a new majority. This condition made the early dissolution of the chambers inevitable.
While some are lamenting the government's collapse, one party is thrilled. The far-right wing, Brothers of Italy, currently leading the polls, looks like to win more seats than any other. Skeptical of Brussels and the European Union policies, it's not clear it will be able to manage relationships with the European Union leaders as well as Draghi. With the Italian Prime Minister Mario Draghi's resignation, the European Union lost one of the last grown-ups in the room, and some worry it could even put further the European Union Recovery Fund's payouts at risk.
UN Deputy Spokesman said Antonio Guterres had arrived in Istanbul. This comes as the United Nations and Turkish officials seek to get a deal with Russia and Ukraine to resume Ukraine's Black Sea grain exports. Ankara said a general agreement was reached on a UN-led plan during talks in Istanbul last week and that it wants to put this into writing this week.
What we're trying to do is have an agreement that would allow for Ukrainian and Russian food and fertilizer to reach global markets. As you know, we've pointed out for many months how serious the food crisis around the world is, and this is a component, a large component of that crisis. So if we can resolve this.
All 24 News understands that the deal calls for a joint control and coordination center that will be established in Istanbul. It will schedule the shipments. Each of the four parties will pick a leads coordinator, but the UN will be in overall control. All ships transporting grain in and out of Ukraine will be inspected. The inspections will take place at a port in Turkey. The deal also ensures safe passage for the shipments of grain. The vessels are not to face any aggression nor attack, and military ships won't be involved. The agreements will run for 4 months and will automatically be renewed if none of the signatories object. The European Union's Council adopted the European Commission's proposal for a new set of sanctions against Russia on July 21st. These sanctions include a ban on the import of Russian gold into the EU and an expansion of the list of products and technologies that are subject to regulation to stop Russia from using them for military and defense purposes. According to Zakharova, a spokeswoman for the Russian Foreign Ministry, the EU's long-standing policy of applying pressure to Russia has no future and is futile. But the disastrous effects on the world's economy and security are more and more clear. 3 people were killed and 23 others were wounded in the latest shelling in Ukraine's second biggest city of Kharkiv. The Belarusian president, meanwhile, blamed Ukrainian leaders for the war and said that all sides must come to an agreement to end the conflict. Nebi Khazini.
These are the bewildering minutes following the shelling of 2 districts of Ukraine's eastern city of Kharkiv. 3 people were killed and 23 fell wounded. And this school in Kramatorsk is now all destroyed after being a target of a rain of missiles. Almost 5 months after the start of its special military operation in Ukraine, Russia has announced it is expanding its objectives to territories other than those of eastern Ukraine. President Zelensky of Ukraine made another plea for the West for the heavy weaponry he needs to defend his cities.
Each of these Russian strikes is an argument for Ukraine to receive more HIMARS and other modern effective weapons.
Britain, neglecting Russia's warning, announced it would send artillery guns and more than 1,500 of anti-tank weapons to Ukraine. Russia's defense ministry, meanwhile, says Moscow's forces had destroyed 4 US-supplied high-mobility artillery rocket systems in 15 days. And there, in neighboring Belarus, the Belarusian president Alexander Lukashenko has warned the watching world of a nuclear war if all sides don't come to an agreement to end the conflict in Ukraine.
Come on, let's stop. We must not go further. Further is nuclear war. It must not go that far.
Moscow has accused the West of dragging out the conflict by supplying Kiev with more arms and said this justifies Russia's attempts to exert control over the Ukrainian territory beyond the eastern Donbass region for its own protection.
2 European wildfires now. The damage done by recent wildfires across Europe is becoming clearer. The EU Satellite Monitoring Service says fires have already razed more land this year than in the whole of 2021. That's 517,000 hectares so far. It's feared the record of 1 million hectares lost to wildfires in 2017 will be broken by the end of this year. There have been fires in France, Portugal, Greece, Italy, Slovenia, and Albania, but more than a third of the devastation has been witnessed in Spain. Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss made the Tory party leadership run off to become the next Prime Minister of Britain. In the latest round of voting, Penny Mordaunt has been knocked out. This comes while Britain faces a difficult economic condition and a Prime Minister to be elected in September. More in this report.
Hasta la vista, baby.
These are the very last words of a Prime Minister expressing his farewell in his own inimitable style. A leave-in session ending with a number of Conservative MPs giving Boris Johnson a standing ovation, except that the former Prime Minister not applauding his successor. It's now the end of a chapter in the British politics. In the meantime, another chapter has already started with a race to lead the UK reaching the final phase.
Mordaunt, 105. Sunak, 137. Truss, 113. Therefore, Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss will be the candidates going forward to a final ballot of Conservative Party members.
Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss topped the final ballot of MPs, emerging as the final candidates. The pair will have an exhaustive 6-week schedule of hostings and media appearances.
And I'm the person who can go into number 10, I can hit the ground running and I can get things done. And I think that's what colleagues have voted for, and that's what I now want to take to Conservative members around the country.
I believe I'm the only candidate who can do that, and my values are also those of our members, and I've got the experience and the vision to translate those values into a government that delivers for the British people.
Whoever triumphs when the result is announced on September the 5th will inherit some of the most difficult economic conditions in Britain in decades. Inflation is on course to hit 11% annually, growth is stalling, industrial action is on the rise, and the pound is near historic lows against the dollar.
Zionist forces launched airstrikes targeting Syrian military positions around Damascus overnight, killing 3 soldiers, wounding 7 others, and causing material damage. The missiles were fired from Syria's Zionist-occupied Golan Heights just past midnight, adding that the Syrian army was able to shoot down some of the missiles with air defense missiles. Still in the Middle East, but now in Iraq. Iraq has declared a day of mourning for 8 people killed in a rocket strike in the semi-autonomous Kurdish region on Wednesday. The latter is blaming Turkey for the attack. More details with Osama Ayati.
Caskets containing bodies of 9 victims killed in the artillery strikes in northern Iraq were transported Thursday from the semi-autonomous Kurdish-run northern region to the capital Baghdad for burial. The caskets were wrapped in Iraqi flags and a wreath-laying ceremony was carried out at Erbil International Airport, attended by the region's president, Iraqi foreign minister, in addition to officials and relatives of the victims. The caskets were then put into an Iraqi Air Force plane that transported them to the capital.
It was a very sad news. The poor guy just got married 5 days ago. I demand the Iraqi government initiate deterrent measures against Turkey by shutting down their embassy, cutting trade, political and economic relations. Turkey disregarded Iraq's sovereignty.
The Iraqi government, which condemned the attack as flagrant violation of Iraq's sovereignty, convened an emergency national security meeting, summoned Turkey's ambassador to Baghdad, and ordered a pause in dispatching a new Iraqi ambassador to Ankara. Angry Iraqis took to the streets late Thursday to decry deadly strikes on a tourist resort, the previous day that the government has blamed on Turkey.
Today, the people of Baghdad stand in denunciation in front of the Turkish embassy. After the attacks of the Turkish government on Iraqi lands, airstriking civilian sites,
protesters gathered outside the old Turkish embassy in Baghdad's neighborhood of Waziriya, with demonstrations starting peacefully but later escalated. Some in the crowd threw stones at riot police and burned tires.
This is a message to Iraq's Prime Minister Mustafa al-Kadhimi. Anytime there is a transgression by a country, whether Iran, Turkey or anyone else, we the Iraqi people will stand against them as we stood against ISIS or tyrants.
The Turkish embassy, which had relocated the heavily fortified green zone last year, cancelled visa appointments for the day, while Turkey's foreign minister rejected accusations that his country's military carried out on Wednesday attack on the district of Zaku in the Iraqi semi-autonomous northern Kurdish region.
After hostilities erupted in the nation's capital, Tripoli, leaving at least 7 civilians dead and pushing more than 200 people to be evacuated on the region, one of Libya's rival government on Friday urged militias to put an end to the fighting. In a statement, the Libyan Presidential Council in Tripoli urged all forces participating to return to their posts right away. It is the most recent act of violence to disrupt the relative calm after over 10 years of civil conflict, and it occurs as the nation is caught in a political deadlock between two opposing sets of authorities. Violence has broken out in Tripoli on a number of occasions recently as a result of the divides. Tribal fighting in Sudan's Blue Nile state has forced thousands of people from their homes. Clashes between the Bati and Hausa tribes have left more than 100 people dead and many more wounded. The volatile security situation means aid organizations have been unable to reach many displaced families. Heavy gunfire was heard at around 5 a.m. on Friday at the main military base outside Mali's capital, Bamako, before easing after about an hour. After the gunfire died down, Malian armed forces and helicopters could be heard circling above the base in the town of Kati, which is a key military base for Mali. A police raid in a slum in Brazil's Rio de Janeiro left at least 18 people dead on Thursday. The army and the police stormed a slum in North Rio de Janeiro in the morning to capture people suspected of robbing vehicles, loads, banks and stores in many neighborhoods. Flooding and landslides during Niger's rainy season have so far left 15 people dead and affected more than 23,000 others. Niger, the world's poorest country by the benchmark of the UN's Human Development Index, is often hit by floods when the badly needed rain arrive. Australia reported one of its highest deadly death tolls from the novel coronavirus on Thursday, while hospital admissions hovered near record levels as authorities struggled to get ahead of highly contagious Omicron variants. Over 55,600 new cases were recorded on Thursday, the highest since May the 18th. Northern Kenya hasn't seen a drop of rain in 3 years. There are only wild berries left to eat. The Horn of Africa is experiencing its worst drought in 40 years, which has plunged at least 18 million people into extreme hunger. Sofian Kinturi with the details.
3 years have passed since the last rainy season in northern Kenya. There are only white berries left to eat in this dusty desert, even though she's aware that it makes her 5 children ill. Lokamatier continues to serve it to them. The mother of Pirapul, a hamlet of thatched huts in the dry county of Marsabit, 2 days' walk from the closest town, says that this is the only way to survive.
We are now used to our situation. We don't know how to farm, and all our animals died because of drought. We're starving here. Eating these berries is the only way we know how to survive. I give these to my children because there is nothing else to give them. If these wild berries are the only thing I can get, that's what I'm going to give them.
The worst drought to hit the Horn of Africa in 40 years is currently here. At least 80 million people worldwide are suffering from severe hunger. In Kenya, 4 million people are suffering from hunger as the country prepares for a crucial presidential election on August 9th.
This time the drought is terrible. In the past, droughts were separated by many years. In the past, droughts happened. More animals survived than died, and those who survived recovered as soon as it rained and provided us with milk and meat. Today, when a drought occurs, it can last 3 years until our pastures are dry. When cattle die, humans die because our lives depend on animals.
The northern desert regions, nearly 950,000 children under the age of 5 and 135,000 pregnant suffer from famine, according to officials' figures from June. Conditions in the three hardest hit countries, including Marsabit, are bordering on famine.
Well, that's all we have for now. We reached the end of our program. This is Karim Zachary signing off. Bye for now.